Today we're looking at VINDICTA. It's a new action-adventure, first-person shooter, which if you read the store page you'll also think is about stealth, but we'll get to that later. This is quite an expensive one for VR, coming in at $30 or £23. It's currently got a 33% discount, making it a much nicer $20 or just over £15. So let's get this show on the road. Let me tell you about this game straight from the devs. Behind the gates of their massive HN1 facility, UB Industries reveals itself to be the evil corporation it really is, building a robot army in its evil plans to take over the world. But hope is all but lost in this world. As an elite infantry agent, Agent V, your mission is simple. Infiltrate the fortified facility. Seek and destroy evil robots. Put an end to UB Industries' operations once and for all. VINDICTA, a shooting game with a strong stealth component, will make you feel as immersed as ever as you find your way around UB Industries, shooting robots, ducking to avoid their incoming bullets, and hiding to escape enemy fire. Discover a whole new level of VR action gaming and feel your heart racing as you pick up deadly weapons of all grades to fight off evil robots out to take you down. Features include active VR gameplay, a locomotion system, precision shooting, deadly weapons, a variety of enemies, and a scoring system. Do you have what it takes? Okay, so you've seen a bit of gameplay in the background, and really VINDICTA is a good game, but I really feel like the store page is an important point of reference here. VINDICTA sees you move through each level, finding switches, killing enemies in increasingly large battles, and doing a bit of platforming here and there. You've got some sweet ass guns that almost all feel good or great to use. You've got a nice old headshot mechanic, which is also your combo multiplier, which means that you're double rewarded for shooting heads, which is great because it feels and sounds good. And you've got a really solid movement system. For an early access game, these fundamentals are super important, and I'm really happy to say that VINDICTA is fundamentally solid with polished visuals, sounds, and gameplay. Despite my opinion of the game being positive, there are some pretty big things I think you should know before you buy. The immersion provided by VR in this game is amongst some of the best I've seen, making me feel like I'd stepped through the TV into a PS1 or maybe PS2 era game with the visual and sound stylings. I'm playing on the Rift, and I'm pleased to say that there was no issue caused by that life choice. I played the first level or two using the arm swinging movement option. It was nice because it was really involving, but it felt a bit inefficient at times and didn't really increase my immersion enough to be worth the trade-off for me. I then moved on to the analog movement classic style, which is always my go-to. It's not perfect, and occasionally if you're trying to go full tilt you might get an awkward moment where you're trying to move in a straight line but you're going off at a bit of an angle, but with a slightly measured approach it's all good. At its core, you move from room to room, shooting enemies who are waiting there for you. Sometimes flying enemies or little grounded guys will come out of the woodworks and jump into the fray. The robots shoot really slow bullets at you, and you've got to dodge your head or move yourself physically or with the analog stick to avoid taking damage. It reminded me of Blasters of the Universe, the way I would just sassily roll my head out of the way and return fire, and at times it felt really cool. The first problem I have is with them saying that there's a strong stealth component to the gameplay. Bullshit. Every door you open, you're greeted by robots immediately in your face. I didn't need a stealth component. I wasn't sad. This is an arcade game, so why they'd want to encourage you to pretend you're Sam Fisher is beyond me. There are cover mechanics too, but the game design actively punishes you for using them. You see, if you stand behind something, there are a number of enemies that are like robot bugs, which will run straight towards you, leap up and explode. This means that being stationary is often the worst thing you can do. And sitting behind something means that you've just stopped yourself being able to kill all the little buggers trying to close in on you, because you can no longer see them. You've got to question as well, if there is any kind of stealth component, why are all the guns just normal, unsilenced ones? It's not really a problem though. Just trust me and ignore the notion of stealth entirely. I feel like at this stage it's just bad marketing. And before you ask if the stealth is coming later because this is early access, there's currently an expected 2 additional levels. Don't hold your breath for more, but at least 2. There's 5 currently, including the tutorial, and the last level took me probably about 45 minutes, and the whole thing took me about 2.5 hours. So if you're playing speedily like myself, then I'd expect about 4 hours to complete your first run after all of the levels are released. Though it could be a fair shake longer if you're really bad. What I think they might have meant to get you feeling randy about when they talked about the stealth was this theme of infiltration. You're supposed to climb things sometimes, which is pretty fun. It's a decent climbing mechanic if you don't have a low ceiling and a light slap bang in the middle of your play space. But the things you're climbing are basically just jungle gyms that there's no discernible reason for at least half the time. There were a few tense climbing sections, especially towards the end, where you really had to stretch. Unfortunately, the tension did at times feel like it came more from my fear of dying and not wanting to replay a section, as checkpoints became increasingly far apart. The level design itself is fine in the sense that you go down corridors, sometimes there's a room at the end, sometimes more corridors, a big room, or even sewers, which are basically just glorified corridors really, aren't they? I'm honestly not sure why the Robot Corporation is producing sewerage, nor why their sewers are full of grinders, but I'm sure it's something to do with how evil they are. If you try to think about the level design, you're just going to hurt yourself. It doesn't make any sense. It is fairly good at facilitating the gameplay, though environmental hazards like fire and pits are all generally an inconvenience more than anything else. Beating them doesn't really take any skill or timing. It's just a thing you have to do, a box to tick, and it really just serves to punctuate one kill room from the next. It is nice to traverse the world in 3D, but again, I have to come back to the fact that we can't just let VR games off for having weak level design. It's not Siren levels of poor. Clearly a lot of work went into making this game feel polished. For a fairly expensive game, I think they dropped the ball a bit when it comes to how the levels play out, but there definitely are moments that could make me happy with the price. I just would have liked for them to have occupied more of the total content. Hopefully the last 2 levels will continue where the 5th one left off, because it was full of gratuitous fighting and was really quite compelling. The visual storytelling is pretty much non-existent, and the actual storytelling is 95% on the store page. I don't really think it needs a story, but just so you know, there isn't one. The enemy placement within the world was weird and a bit lazy at times. As I said, the concept of stealth and subtlety goes straight out the window when you open doors and enemies are sat there looking at you. Another weird one was the amount of filler enemies that seem to litter the corridors. It's trivially easy to kill one robot at a time, and I expect to have a red charging robot company on their own maybe the first time I see them, to establish what it is and what it does. But to have repeated encounters with them in a hallway, where they pose no threat whatsoever, just felt pointless. They could be there to help you keep your points multiplier up, probably not, because they didn't take a lot of opportunities to create ambushes or subvert your expectations when doing a quick bit of backtracking, for example when pressing a button at a dead end. Throughout your time in Vindicta, you get a fair amount of guns to use. They all felt pretty good, or they felt unique and like an intentional handicap. For some reason I didn't get on with the assault rifle at all. The holographic sight or whatever it is just didn't seem to line up no matter how hard I tried. So I resorted to holding the gun a bit lower and using my previous shots to gain my flow of bullets where I wanted them. The pistols felt really good. I do like when games have good pistols, and these were super accurate and natural to use. The SMG was similarly good, and there's a few heavy weapons that were nice treats nearer the end. Barring a few fights towards the end, Vindicta is not a hard game to beat, with only a few attack types from specific enemies likely to hit you often. This has the side effect of making the score feel more important, which is a shame because the score mechanics are fairly shallow and didn't really feel like a main attraction. The difficulty did increase throughout, but the pacing felt a bit off to me, with the last hour or so of the game feeling way more exciting than the one before. It's a good way to finish, but I wish it had ramped up sooner so that by the end of the 5th level things were even more intense. Also, as I said, the checkpoint spacing got bigger and bigger, but that doesn't mean it's more challenging. It just means that the punishment for death felt a bit too big at times, especially when you could have a 6 or so minute section where 5 minutes are easy, and the 6th minute involves navigating a climbing frame or a hectic fight, so if you lose you're on a bit of a long walk back. By the end of my time with Vindicta, I'd killed a whole lot of robots, and I had fun despite dripping with sweat, because VR and hot summer weather is not a good mix. At £15, $20, around that ballpark, I think this is one to recommend. It does still feel like an early VR game, but a fairly complete one at that. I do need to reiterate, it's fairly long, with fundamentally good gameplay, and I did enjoy my time. Vindicta is a step forward in a few ways, but it's not the leap we're all craving. Lastly, for what it's worth, after communicating with the devs, I'm pretty confident in their desire to deliver a really satisfying game. I hope all my feedback helps to improve the experience for everyone, and who knows, maybe I'll make a follow-up video. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. If you like this video then please leave a like. If you want to see more in-depth, honest VR reviews, then make sure you're subscribed and let me know if my video has swayed you either way. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.